Egridios' life takes a drastic turn when a mysterious witch visits his village, unleashing a series of truly bizarre and indescribable events. The manga starts with us seeing the back of our main protagonist. He reminds himself that it took him more time than usual and reflects on how the Forbidden Forest has been acting weird. Sure that the harsh lecture his father is going to give him will hurt his ears, he rushes to trudge through the woods. As he makes his way, he stops by the edge of the forest and glances over his small village. His village is located near the sea, and though he's sure he will be scolded, he's still glad that he would be stuffed with good food while all that was to happen. Thinking about the fat pheasant he caught, kind of made his mouth water, and he created a perfect plan to first get his mother on his side. This way, he would be in his mother's good graces, and his father would go a bit soft on him. He makes his way near a wall and, in the next instant, climbs it and makes his way to the other side, landing with a loud thud. As mentioned earlier, his plan is to spot his mother first. Gently, he makes his way to the kitchen, and as he notices that there's a pin-drop silence, he opens the window, and a loud and eerie screeching sound is heard everywhere. Knowing that his sneak plan failed just as it was about to start, and he announces his presence, he adds that he brought a gift for father. Egridios makes his way inside. The kitchen is empty. He continues to promote how they could make the meat. He strolls around, and this time, it is clear that it is oddly too quiet. All his pondering goes away, and Egridios finally opens the door to the main bedroom. There, he sees something very heartbreaking. He finds someone laying right next to the bed, and whole world of Egridios came crumbling down. He drops the bird with a thud and prays to God that may this all be just a dream. He saw that his father, the village head, had his crown on the ground, and both his parents were not breathing. He starts huffing for air and rushes towards them and calls out to his parents. He tries to awaken them, but they are unresponsive. Just under his father's hand, there are 2 letters, and as he grabs them, both letters are related to him and another person. As poor Egridios opens the letter, he reads something that would change his life forever. Without any pause, he dashes outside to check on something, and we learn what his father wrote him just before he was to draw his last breath. His father wrote to his son Egridios and tells him that a week ago, a few hunters near their village send out word that there is a witch on the move, and their village needs to move out. However, before they were able to react, a strong wind carrying something unknown blew and took away everything. As his father prayed that he would get this safe and sound, he pleads with him to carry on with the weight of what he is about to see and the responsibility he was to carry. Egridios, not knowing anything, opens the front door to see something so brutal that his core is completely shook. His entire household fell into misery, and every single person in his household couldn't make it. His father also bids him farewell, crying that he will join his mother soon. There, Egridios sees that all his brothers and young siblings didn't make it. Trembling, he closes the eyes of one of his siblings, and as tears fall from his eyes, he weeps and cries out to see that his entire village is dead. The wind that blew affected every single person in the village, and immediately ended their lives. The once bright and cheerful town was completely empty, and only corpses were found everywhere. Egridios cries and calls out to anyone near, and after crying and gathering himself, he clenches the letter, and with pure rage boiling inside him, Egridios doesn't care about anything but revenge. As tears overflow from his eyes, he grinds his teeth and swears that he will kill that witch in the most painful way imaginable. Without making any stops, he gets up and opens the main door of the village and heads into the Forbidden Forest. For ages, these woods were something that almost all humans stayed away from, and from nursery, they were taught that all witches lived inside these thick trees. Egridios' father inherited a part of these woods from the king of the country, and with his title, he rules over this area. Egridios alone makes his way into the forever stretched woods. He brings out a map which he found earlier, and there is a marking telling him that previously the witch was found here, and he decides to sneak by the near route. He also puts a mask over his face to make sure that nothing in the air affects him. As he is about to go, a loud noise alerts him, and he quickly sneaks behind the thick tree. There, we see a dozen-meter-tall beast that makes its way and shakes everything with its aura and movement. And we learn that the Forbidden Forest is not only the place where witches are but different types of beasts and monsters dwelled in it as well. As the gigantic Tauroth makes its way around him, Egridios is sure not to mess with it or startle it in any way. Egridios goes on and even spends the nights in that forest, and is determined that he would not let go of that witch. As he makes his way deeper in the woods, he notices that around a certain area, there are no signs of animals near the streams. There, he also notices that the wind seems to follow a particular pattern. As he figures that the witch is nearby, he clenches his fist and readies himself to face her off at any point. He follows the path, and far from his sight, he sees a figure walking slowly and trembling. It seems like she used all her energy, and was slowly moving away. Closer up, the figure has long, dark black hair, and was quietly walking. Just seeing this, Egridios knows that it is a witch, and with angry and bloodthirsty eyes he glares at her and is more than happy to see her. He puts down a large bag of something. He opens it, and inside were armor and weapons of all sorts, ranging from swords to hammers. He straps a thick armored arm around and tightens it, and in the next instant, he brings out a sharp sword. Without any shouts or declaring, he lunges forwards ready to end her once and for all. As he approaches, he is sure that from outside she has a human body and decided to strike her heart and soft organs. Egridios stabs her with brute force and twists his sword inside. Although the sword didn't pierce through her organs, the witch noticed and immediately fell. As she fell, she screams from the pain and discomfort and brings out thick roots. Egridios quickly dodges and ignites a bomb and throws it inside her shield that she was working on to defend herself. The bomb that he threw had flammable liquid that sticked on her skin and burned bright. As she cried from the indescribable pain, Egridios was pleased and knew that her immortal body could easily handle this, and he would need to continue. He brings out a strong wire and throws it out. Simultaneously, he tosses a smoke bomb to blur her sight. As smoke surrounds her, Egridios couldn't hold back his emotion and cried out how she killed the people he loved in an instant and didn't show an ounce of regret or remorse. As the witch gasped for air and brought out her hands since she couldn't see anything, in the next instant, the wire that Egridios threw earlier wrapped around her neck and pulled her back around a tall, thick tree. As she grunted, Egridios began to mark his face and told her that she had ended generations of people in a few days, reminding her that she killed them all, and 522 people lost their lives because of her spell. With pure, uncontainable anger, he screamed that he would slaughter her in the worst way possible. Telling her something this terrifying, Egridios didn't hesitate and brought out the sword near him, sure that he would strike so hard that it would go through her body. The witch immediately tapped the tree, and from the ground, roots appeared. As she commanded them, they aggressively attacked Egridios in a sequence. He dodged and parried all the attacks, and while manhandling every single one of them, with a threatening voice, he yelled and told her to get up. Since she had fled the trap Egridios placed her in earlier, he approached her and warned her that they were just getting started. He readied the sword, and the witch started to make weird noises, and as he closed his distance, the witch began to cry at the top of her lungs and screamed. There, we saw the real face of the witch, and she was crying with everything that she had. Snot formed in her nose, and she wept, begging him to stop. Egridios flinched and asked how a witch could speak the tongue of humans, and this made him even more angry as the witch who killed his parents and everyone knew human language, but still killed every single one of them. He tossed his wire one more time, and it cornered her near the tree. He leveraged it, and closed the distance one more time, and the witch seemed ready to beg for her life. Egridios leaned over and, with a threatening voice, asked, "Why did you kill everyone?" Without any more questions, he choked her and pointed the sword right next to her throat. She replied and told him that she didn't do it, and Egridios asked, "Why did you leave this place in the first place?" While gasping for air, she told him that she just followed the wind that guided her. Egridios looked at her, and it felt like she was somewhat telling the truth, and he was sure that maybe there was another missing piece to this and threw her to the floor. She dropped to the floor like a little child, and she started to crab walk and thought to herself that he was done now. With a serious tone, Egridios told her that she was going nowhere and that she would be coming to his village. Adding a serious threat to his statement, he also told her that he would kill her if she were to make any unnecessary move. Poor little witch got up, shaking and crying because of her luck. Egridios packed his stuff and noticed that she could barely stand and walk. He tells her in a cold voice that she would either need to walk or die, and the witch started to weep and told him that she couldn't walk anymore since she was trembling too much. He tossed the wire from his thumb and wrapped it all over her body. As she started to struggle, she pleaded with him not to hurt her anymore and cried, "No more freezing, no more burning, no more hurting," and started to twirl aggressively. He lifted her up and froze her mouth so she wouldn't bother him or be a source of attraction for the beasts, and began his way back home. As Egridios walked, he was surprised that there were no monsters around them whatsoever. Even the tiniest and sneakiest animals were gone. He figured that maybe she did that, and there Egridios walked day and night, without taking any rest. Finally he got back to his village. For a brief moment, his tired eyes saw the beautiful sight that he would always find, kids spinning around him telling him to buy them sweets, and all the people around them busy with their lives and businesses. But in reality, everything was now over, and death and darkness were all that was left. Every single person there didn't survive the wind. Egridios loosened the wire, and as she jolted, he asked her, "If you didn't do this, who is responsible for this?" She looked at a kid and smacked her lips, and it seemed like she visualized something. Slowly, she lifted her slender arms and pointed to the woods and told him that the forest cursed his village and the people around it. Egridios, absolutely tired from all of this, pondered what the hell she meant by that. She added further that this was just the start of something way bigger, and told him that there were way more curses coming. Egridios exclaimed, and she started to list the terrible curses that were on their way, starting from warped death, rot of lands, befouling of the water, stillness of the winds, wilted trees, leaves, and bloom. Egridios asked her if these were all coming to their nearby lands as well, and if there was any way they could stop all of this. The poor witch flinched for a minute and started to mutter a spell and enchanted a wand and knelt down for a second. She pointed the wand at the kid, and as the magic appeared, we saw the poor sight. The poor kid had passed away days ago, and the curses somehow made it seem like the bodies were completely fine, but in reality, their bodies were already rotten. The witch tells him that the curse corrected the flow of death, and it was all warped inside him. As Egridios panicked, every intention in his mind wanted to shout something about her lies, but the conversation continued, and she added that the curses killed them all, but their bodies were not able to rot, and normal eyes cannot identify this. She points out that even the birds didn't feed on their flesh. As he sat down, he was somewhat sure since the fruit in the basket was already rotten, but the body was fine through and through. Egridios, while collecting himself, figured that the curses robbed his people's ability to die naturally. He told her that he would be gathering them all. Although she panicked, she decided to stay there, and with a sad voice he told her to send them off one by one. And she nodded her head in agreement. Egridios was going to line up the corpses in the main road, and he began doing it over and over. By that time, more than 500 people were there, and the line stretched all the way of dead people, begging to be sent off. As Egridios was trying to keep his cool, deep down he was at the edge and just holding on by a thin thread. As he made his way to his parents' bodies, he read his father's letter one more time. And there, his father wrote him about his first hunt of that pheasant. When Egridios was little, the three of them ate its skewered meat. His father reminded Egridios that he scolded him a lot that day, and as his letter came to an end, his father told him that the pheasant that he brought for them was delicious, and it was so good that his father even ate his sister's share. There, we get a flashback of everything that happened that day, and his parents thought the world of him, and his father's last request was that their son Egridios would send them off while always smiling and eating something delicious for himself, and wanted him to rule over his people in a better way. As he remembered the love his parents gave him, he began to tear up after seeing his parents lying there. He weeps for his misfortune, and cries out that these were his parents. As he begs the witch to send them off to a better place, she looks at him crying and mutters a spell on them. Egridios held both of their hands tightly and cried while calling out to them, telling them, "I would endure all your scolding if we could eat a grilled pheasant one more time together." As he finished, his parents vanished into thin air. As a gush of wind blew, and we saw the empty dead village, he sat there, dead from the inside and completely silent. The witch mutters and asks him if there is anyone else. Hearing this, he remembers that there are some places that he needs to check. As he got up, the poor witch flinched again in a cute manner, and Egridios began to search the seaside of the village. He notices that there were footprints. It seemed like they were the footprints of someone fleeing for the sea. He sees a few bodies and dashes to check, and as he examines them, his eyes widen, and he goes speechless. Over on the witch's side, she quietly stood there in a tired stance, and from the back, Egridios yells out to her and runs towards her. As she spins around, she sees that Egridios was dashing while holding two little kids with him, and he yells that these two are still breathing. As she was shocked herself, he adds that someone at least needs to survive. The girls' condition was very poor, and they were gasping for the tiny bit of air they could get. Without any pause, the witch mutters another spell, and with a gentle blow, fragments of a healing sphere fly over to them, and it enters their mouths. Egridios held them with a very troubled expression and deep down prayed for this to work, and suddenly their breaths became more normal, and after some time, they were breathing normally. Egridios starts to cry, and tears falls on the girl's cheeks, and she wakes up. He calls out to them, and both of them wake up from their days-long sleep. As they barely manage to mutter his name, one of the girls stretches out her arm and wipes his tears off, and tells him not to cry. As she says this, she falls asleep one more time, and immediately, Egridios kneels down and calls out to the witch. He starts to show her respect and starts to refer to her as "Milady," and there he bows his head and thanks her for the act of mercy. While trembling, he reflects that he has been nothing but cruel to her, and despite that, she helped him without a second thought. As she looks at his crying face, he thanks her again, and she herself starts to cry as snot begins to fall from her nose. As Egridios sees this, he can't help but ponder even harder how he treated her to the worst of the worst. Full of guilt, he bows lower and formally introduces himself as the new lord of these lands, and tells her that he will be needing help to rebuild the land his father made with blood and sweat. He bows and asks for her to stay with him and begs her to share her power and wisdom. Hearing this, the poor witch goes into panic mode and starts to cry like a baby, and weeps that she just wants to go home. As her loud cries even wake up both the little girls, the witch starts to cry like a spoiled brat and starts to flap her legs in the air. As Egridios saw something that he should not have seen, both girls slap their little hands on his eyes, and there the poor witch cries, yelling that if she were to say no, he would hurt her again and again. As she continues, our scene swoops to a faraway land where a person is writing something, and she is informed that Oromelion's land was annihilated completely. As she questions this, it seems like she was related to that village as well. Later, as Egridios gathered the bodies of everyone by the seaside, both Para and Percy bid farewell to their parents. As the witch cast magic on them, they started to vanish, and both girls were silent. The girls spun around and comforted Egridios, telling him that they were fine since, from the first day, their parents had told them about the dangers and how one day both the twins could be all alone. They smiled and reassured him that they were okay and happy to have Egridios with them. He looked at the little girls, surprised that they were strong and brave despite their age, and was sure that they were brought up well. Both girls ran over to her and clung onto the witch, telling him that they even had his friend with them. As she remained still, Egridios couldn't tell them that she was a witch and instead told them that she was a magician. Both girls greeted her, and the witch greeted them back and gently smiled at them, which was harmless and kind. It seemed like the witch somewhat liked kids. All of them went home, and the witch introduced herself to be Janansisha. Later, as all of them returned to the mansion, Egridios brightened the stairway. He glanced back, and both girls were asleep, and Janansisha was barely holding on to them. He grabbed one of the girls and brought them to a room. As the witch wondered what this was all about, he quietly left them and bid them good night. She kept staring at him and relaxed after he left. Janansisha had no idea what to do and decided to just sneak in the center of the girls. Finally, she was ready to sleep. On the other hand, Egridios couldn't shake the thought of such a heavy burden on his shoulders now. He would have to build everything from the start, and mocked himself for thinking about such things as a joke. He reminds himself that he can't even feed the 4 people that he has, and as he sat down and made a list of the things that he must do, starting with asking for aid, he reflects that if Gria was here, things would have been easy. As he worked and worked, he fell asleep. In the morning, he woke up and quickly glared back to see that the sun was already up. He dashed off to make breakfast, and reminded himself that he had people waiting on him. In the kitchen, reality struck, and he had no idea how to make bread or anything. As he circled in the kitchen, he eventually gave up and rushed to their room. He decided to just go hunting and figure out the rest later. He knocked on the door, and no noise was coming from inside, and as he opened it, all 3 girls had disappeared. It seemed like Jen went back to her forest, and both girls went back to their places, and he concludes that hypothetically, they had no reason to stay from the beginning. He was still shocked to see that Para and Percy didn't cry a single tear even though their parents passed away. As he traced them down, he noticed that Jen was with them as well. On the other hand, all 3 girls were fishing, and both girls demonstrated how their parents would fetch food for them. Each strike landed them a fish, and they even taught Jen how to fish. Although she just stared, they ended up catching a bunch and left with cheerful singing. As the water splashed against Jen's leg, she falls down and panics. However, in the next instant, water came rushing toward them and completely washed them off, and they lay there in an awkward yet cute and funny pose. All 3 of them laughed at each other and had a blast. As they teased Jen, they were sure that she was the best partner they could find in these tough times, and as Jen coughed, she saw the beautiful warm sun. The rays fell on her skin, and her eyes widened. She immediately tried to grab the warm ray and muttered that it was so warm. Her mood brightened up, and she grabbed both of their hands and placed them near her cheek and let out a captivating smile, telling them that they were warm as well. As they smiled as well, Egridios caught up to them, and there they revealed their catches and let him know that he was not alone and they would handle the things that they could do. As he couldn't believe it all, in the kitchen, he grilled the shrimps and fish while the girls managed to take care of all the extra difficult things that defeated him earlier. Finally, they all sat down and were ready to feast. Both Para and Percy exclaimed, and Jen was just looking at the dishes without saying anything. Egridios let Jen eat whatever she liked, and both of the girls started to eat. Jen kept staring, and in the next instant, drool overflowed, and it seemed like Jen had never had the chance to eat anything. Egridios leaned over and offered her food, and the sharp, pointy fork that he used to offer terrified her, and she started to cry and told him not to stab her. As he placed down the food, Jen tried it, and was blown away by the taste, and as the twins handed her food, she started to chug down the food aggressively. As all of them ate, Egridios noticed a voice coming from the outside, and he rushed to check and cranked open the window to see, and there a girl was pleading for help and cried out to him. Egridios quickly rushes out, and the girl points her finger, crying that her father and mother are being chased by a fortress bee. As he confirms the location, Egridios doesn't hesitate for a minute and immediately gears up. He knows that it takes more than 6 people to take it down, but it is a matter of life and death if he delays. He is confident that with Jen's help, he could make something work. As the 3 girls themselves go outside, Egridios shouts to Jen, picks her up, and runs toward the location the girl mentioned. He runs, and as she screams, he notices smoke emitting from the side, and Egridios starts to scream at them and tells them to steer the cart toward his direction. As they somehow hear him, they turn their cart, and behind them are hundreds upon hundreds of bees coming in so fast that dust blows from their wings. Egridios tells her to cast the thick-root spell, and there we see the terrifying fortress bee. As he tells her to activate her spell, 3 tiny, timid branches sprout from the ground, and the bee doesn't even pay any attention to that puny attack. Egridios grabs her and throws her over into the cart, and decides to fight that gigantic thing alone. As he ignores all their concerned talks, he readies himself for the thing that he needs to do to take it down. Egridios throws a mixture toward the bee, and it lands perfectly and ignites. In the next instant, he jumps and stabs it with his spear, but the thick armor of the bee doesn't even crack. As the tiny bees attack him and he gets knocked over, he decides to attack it with a hammer and break open the shell this way. He runs toward it one more time. As he jumps, he gathers strength and smashes the head of the bee with his hammer, and luckily enough, it cracks its shell a bit, and the pain is also felt by the bee. In reply, the bee opens its mouth and screams, and immediately bites his arm. Thankfully, his armored arm saves his arm from decapitation, and Egridios decides to use his signature move. He throws his combat wire over and binds its mouth. As the bee moves, he uses this as leverage and climbs over the body of the bee. Egridios lands, and this time he is sure not to let go easily. He starts hammering down the shell. Every strike makes its shell weaker, and he is somewhat able to inflict damage. However, the smaller bees soon catch up and attack him. Egridios is already a little worn off from the instant strength and agility it took to just hammer its shell a little. He gasps for air, and the bees buzz their wings so aggressively that it is clear they would feast on his blood the second he would relax and let his guard down. The fortress bee seems to start moving, and as the swarm attacks him, he barely makes his way and makes up his mind to attack the fortress bee instead of fighting off these thousands and thousands of smaller bees. Egridios runs and notices that someone else is running towards him, on horseback. It seems like the person on the horseback has armor all over it, and has a blazing hot sword right near him. In the next instant, Egridios signals him and grabs onto the wire he had to let go of earlier, and once he grabs it, he pulls it with all his strength, and the bee leans to his side. The knight approaches it, and, in the next second jumps over it, and strikes its neck with the flaming sword. Thanks to the hot temperature, the blade pierces its thick shell, and the knight cuts off its head with ease. Now the swarm of bees chases him, and he dashes off, without calming or celebrating for victory, and shouts at the knight to find the twin and ask for their help. To safely return back, Egridios needs to fight off these bees, and he would need a big net and glue. Without wasting any time, the knight dashes inside the village and calls out to the girls, asking them to help her save their master, and there a beautiful girl rode on the horse, and asks for their assistance. Outside, Egridios was running for his life, and inside, everyone started to prepare a way to stop the problem. Every single one of them gathered ingredients first, and for glue, they needed the strongest one. As they got a mixture that would be strong enough to hold the bees, Gria boiled it, and all of them started to spread the glue across the net. Even Jen tried to help by just pushing dust onto the net. After quickly braiding the net and spreading glue on top, they were finally done, and one of the girls decided to test the stickiness. Jen immediately helped the girl, and this ticked Griya off, and she passed a glare at her. The net was very smelly, and the rescued girl approached Griya and told her not to go outside alone, and tells her if she wanted to go outside, she would need to be covered. Egridios had been running for dozens of minutes, and at this point, he was gasping for air and barely holding on. He used his wire to handle tough heights and intense climbs, and as he made his way to the village, he dashed, and there, Griya was standing while wearing metal armor that was specially made to offer protection from the bees. Egridios asked who was inside and immediately guessed that it was his sister. Despite his tough situation, he didn't forget to laugh at her outfit, and Griya readied her sword. Both of them teamed up, and Egridios himself grabbed the net to capture the troublesome bees. With one wide swing of the net, he was able to go through hundreds upon hundreds of bees, and the glue was able to catch them perfectly. Even though this worked, the net was somewhat heavy to swing, but they continued and wrapped bees in the ball-like form. And after a tremendous fight, they were able to win, and they both gasped for every bit of air they could get. Both of them removed their masks and stared at each other. As she helped him, the first thing that Egridios asked his sister wasn't anything about her health. Rather, it was about bread and if she knew the technique to make them. As she complained, she replied that she could only make cakes. As they met with the girl group that finally caught up with them, all of them rushed over to hug them, and strangely, they all stopped and couldn't help but notice the absolutely disgusting smell coming from their bodies. As they noticed it themselves, both of their armors were worn out and super smelly from all the sweat, and the armor that Griya wore had not been washed for weeks. Without any word, Griya let Egridios go and fetch them some water. Griya told everyone to follow her to the room, and as they followed and entered into a spare room just near where they all met, Griya lodged a sword inside the bucket of water, and she ignited her sword. The flaming temperature boiled the water, and steam rose from it. As she started casting a spell, almost every one of them was surprised to see this, and her next command was very important. She told everyone to start flapping their arms around, and all of them did that in their own style. Both Para and Percy ran around, and Jen had the most terrible time. As the steam created a sauna environment, all of them sat and enjoyed that experience. However, Jen had another problem. Her hair became wet and was so heavy that it weighed her down. As she cried, Avenger Para and Percy came to help poor General as they all enjoyed the warm bath. Griya told every one of them to just wear their old clothes. As she complained how they didn't even have a single different outfits other than their present one, she told them to enter a mill. Inside, she casts another spell, and the fan starts to spin at a fast speed. Griya's next serious command was to twirl around their body, and all of them did that in their own style, and again, Jen had the most difficult time. As the use of magic blew away Yohel's parents, Egridios offered them food and showed them the way to the dining hall. On the other hand, Jen's hair became so soft and fluffy that both Para and Percy were sure that she was a sheep. As Griya from the back, she approaches Egridios and with a weak voice asks if everyone else made it, and remembering everything, she hugs him, and tells him that he is taking the pain so well. As he reminds her how he couldn't hold back the anger and ran into the woods, he tells her that he knew she would come by and save everything. As they all sat around the dining hall, it was silent, and Egridios was sad that he couldn't offer them anything outside a bowl of dead soup that was frankly terrible to swallow. It was all because they had no food and because of the caravan, they were not able to store. As Egridios tells Jen how to use the spoon, she takes a bite, and immediately roots emerge from the chair. As this shocked him, he spins around his sister's chair, who was actually ready to cut poor Jen down. He tells her to relax, and she reminds him that she is a witch, who killed everyone in their village, and she could kill the children right this instant, and pure hatred and rage dwelled inside her, and she is ready to avenge everyone. And he tells her that he thought of this as well and instead she was just a normal witch who had no connection, and he kind of kidnapped her here. As her sister sees the terrible brother she has, Jen starts to blow mysterious dark smoke, and the soup becomes something hideous. The stench from this almost made them all throw up, and with a threatening look, she offers a big bite of the soup to Egridios. Normally, a person would offer someone to eat something in a beautiful manner, but here things were different. Jen screams out to Egridios and cried out to him to eat this. Even her snot was mixed in the poor bite. His sister looked at him with a troubled look and was sure that he did something terrible to her, and he himself was full of guilt for treating her too harshly. Still, in Jen's eyes, he was a cold killer and kidnapper. As she cried to give him the bite, he mustered the courage and was sure to earn his sister's trust no matter what. He bites in, and poor Jen flinched again. Smoke emitted from his nose, as he was sure that this was not something that a human could eat or digest. Poor Egridios swallowed it whole, and one of the girls decided to sneak under Jen and fed her sister one of the bites as well. Surprisingly, she eats it despite Gria's warning and tells everyone that it is good and it tastes like beans. All of them were blown away by her mature tone, and as Allah and everyone else tried, they could not swallow the threatening soup. Egridios asked Jen if this soup would help everyone be safe from the air that could flow by them, and he asks if she would help them in any way. And while making a red expression, she tells him that she would not help and asked why she would help. She starts to explain that curses can change and they enter the body through various ways, and she tries to showcase herself eating the soup, but she fails and spits out the soup. In an angry tone, Gria reminded her that she can't even use a spoon, and Egridios covers her mouth in hopes that she would not go beyond scare the living crap out of her. Egridios stands up and starts to explain what has happened to their village, and after listening to everything, there remained only 3 survivors. The capo refused to send help, and there was no food left for them. Egridios tells them that Jen purified everyone in the room and shares how they are a bit safe here, but he can't offer them plenty or freedom, and asks them how they fled and came all this way here. They replied and shared that a herd of giant Taurus stormed into the village and destroyed everything that was there, and after that, the fortress began to attack. Egridios reminds them that he killed the bee, and as both brother and sister stand, they introduce themselves, and immediately Allah and her family started to bow their heads to the great family of Margraves. Egridios warmly tells them not to show him that much respect. All of them introduced themselves, and as their chatter went on, they had numerous things planned for tomorrow, starting from raiding the corpse of the dead fortress bee and sending a letter to Allah's brother in the capital. While they were making the plan, Allah collapsed from exhaustion, and Egridios offered them a room to sleep in. In the night, both Egridios and his sister had a serious talk, and he laughed how father left her a letter, and would surely have reminded her to marry over and over again. Egridios was somewhat sad and regretted that he didn't marry anyone, and now he has no backing, and it seemed like everyone around them and in the capital thinks that their lands are plagued and both Egridios and Gria have some sort of illness. Now, almost everyone who once offered them a hand in marriage avoids them, fearing that they would affect their bloodline and families. Despite these challenges, Egridios clenches his fist and tells his sister that it is his life's mission to carry on his father's legacy and rebuild the streets and make them lively again no matter what the cost. The attacks were happening all over the place. His plan was simple. If the capital were to refuse the refugees from Allah's village, then Egridios would have to take care of them, since it was closer to them, and if he were to make something out of that situation, he would need to feed them somehow. Getting food from the fortress B was going to be very important for this as well. Their last course of action and hope is the capital, but as of right now, there were no words or action toward his family and this territory. As both were ready to help themselves and carry on the flame their parents ignited in them, both were about to discuss about their parents' funeral, and they were interrupted by someone crying. They rush outside, and there, Para and Percy were crying and calling out to their parents. They wiped their tiny eyes as they wept. It seemed like they wet the bedsheet and were afraid of the dark room, and what seemed like brave kids, in reality, they just figured out that their parents were not going to come to help them ever again. As they cried and cried, Gria hugs them and kindly embraced both of them, and this seemed to do the trick. Both girls calmed down and stopped crying. She tells Egridios to hang the soiled linens, and as he picked the linen up, he notices that Jen is glaring at him with the most threatening eyes. Somehow, Jen was aggressively hostile toward Gria, and she questions why they cried, and while replacing a new bedsheet, he replies that they woke themselves up after wetting the bed and realized that they won't be able to see their parents ever again. This made them sorrowful, and doubt welled in them. As she was unaware of what had happened, he tells her that after they realize that their parents are gone, both of the girls will find us near them and realize that they are not alone anymore. He adds that they like Jen and they love her a lot. Gria decided to sleep with the girls, and as they laid on the new bed, Jen snuck by as well, and as all four of them adjusted somehow, Egridios left them, and there Gria finally understood that this was Jen's normal sleeping location. Jen lays down and lets out a beautiful smile, knowing that everyone that she now cares for is here, and she closes her eyes.